Welcome to Amazing Tales. Today's story will keep you on the edge of your seat. Stay tuned for a journey filled with emotion and resilience. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Amazing Tales for more incredible stories. Let's dive in. The auditorium of Lincoln Heights High School buzzed with excitement as Principal Charles Weber stepped onto the stage. His polished demeanor and designer suit made him seem untouchable, the epitome of success. But as he began his speech, Rebecca Harris' gaze was fixed, her hands clutching the program tightly. The man speaking was the same one who had dismissed her mother's plea for more time just the day before. Yesterday, her mother had begged for compassion, her voice pleading for more time to care for her sick mother. But Weber had dismissed her, citing child labor laws. Now, as Rebecca listened to him speak about values and sacrifice, she could hardly hold back the disgust. If only he knew who was listening, who had once been in his life. If only he knew whose daughter watched him so intently. Her father, Charlie Myers, had once been a man she trusted. A man whose lies had ruined her mother's life and her own childhood. 17 years ago, Victoria Harris had been on top of the world, CEO of a thriving company, about to marry Charlie Myers. She had everything going for her: beauty, success, a future with the man she thought she would spend her life with. Charlie had swept her off her feet, promising to share in her struggles and build a future together. They met at a charity gala shortly after her parents' tragic death, and Charlie, with his understanding eyes and quiet compassion, was the perfect balm for her grief. "You shouldn't be alone tonight," he had said, appearing at her side with a glass of champagne. "I lost my mother recently. I know that look." They had talked for hours, the chemistry undeniable. Charlie spoke of his farming business in Vermont, of his desire to start fresh after his mother's passing. Victoria had opened up about her struggles running the family business. Charlie had promised to share the load, to make her life easier. As their whirlwind romance blossomed, he proved to be not just loving but capable. He gradually took on more responsibility at Harris Construction, and soon the board of directors adored him. His charm won over everyone, and he was the perfect partner: competent, supportive, and always present. On their wedding day, Victoria had felt a sense of deep gratitude. The universe had taken her parents, but in Charlie she had found someone to build her future with. But everything changed with a knock on the door. Boston Police Department. "Open up." Victoria's world tilted sideways as officers burst in, reading her rights as fraud and criminal conspiracy were tossed her way. Her wedding dress seemed to mock her as she was escorted out of the hotel, her wedding guests staring in horror, their champagne glasses forgotten. Charlie stood by, looking devastated, calling after her, "I'll fix this, we'll fight it together." It wasn't until she sat in the cold interrogation room that the truth began to unravel. Documents bearing her signature, documents she had never seen, authorized payments to criminal enterprises. Money had been siphoned from her company through shell corporations. And then they told her she was pregnant. In the solitary confinement of her cell that night, Victoria placed her hands on her still flat stomach, a quiet promise slipping from her lips. "We'll survive this," she whispered. "Whatever it takes, we'll survive." Prison wasn't designed for mothers and babies, but necessity created a small nursery unit. Victoria spent her days working in the prison laundry, her nights cradling her daughter, Rebecca, who had been born there. The other inmates, some of whom had lost their children to foster care, spoke of their pain, but Victoria knew the importance of keeping her daughter close. "She's strong, like her mama May," an elderly inmate told her. "She's got that same look in her eyes, steel wrapped in softness." Victoria spent every moment she could with Rebecca, trying to make up for the lost time. But as the years passed, they both knew that they couldn't stay in the prison forever. Victoria's health started to fail, but her daughter, who was growing into a smart, determined young woman, never complained. After her release, life didn't get easier. No one wanted to hire an ex-convict, especially one with a white-collar crime conviction. They bounced from shelter to shelter, and Victoria was forced to take whatever work she could find, ultimately taking a job as a janitor at Lincoln Heights High. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and it kept them afloat. Rebecca excelled in school, determined to make a better life for herself despite their circumstances. Then, one day, Charles Weber, who now went by the name of Charlie Myers, was named the new principal. Rebecca had seen him in passing and felt an odd sense of familiarity. Her mother, too, had noticed him but dismissed it as coincidence. But Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That night, as her mother slept, Rebecca walked the grounds of the school, taking out the trash, when she found the leather briefcase. It was partially hidden under a pile of discarded papers. At first, she thought someone had thrown it away by mistake. But when she saw the initials CW stamped on the side, her heart sank. It belonged to Charles Weber, the man she had been trying to forget. Rebecca waited until she was home to open the briefcase. Inside, she found a laptop and other files. Her heart raced as she scrolled through the laptop, stopping when she saw a photo of Charlie younger, with a woman at a resort. That's when it clicked. This was the same man who had been her mother's fiancé, the same man who had orchestrated her mother's downfall. She pulled up more files and read the emails, each one proving that Charles Weber, had been the one behind the fraud that had ruined her mother's life. He had framed her, stolen from the company, and manipulated everyone. He was still doing it, preying on others, and no one knew the truth. The next day, Rebecca made a decision. She would confront him. Miss Harris, Weber said, surprised when Rebecca walked into his office. "What can I do for you?" Rebecca stood tall, holding the USB drive. "I know who you really are," she said, her voice steady. For the first time, she saw fear flicker in his eyes. "I don't know what you think you know. I know exactly who you are. And I know what you did to my mother. I know what you've been doing all these years." He tried to dismiss her, but Rebecca was firm. "You have two choices. You make things right, or I go public with everything I've learned. I'll make sure everyone knows what you've been doing. Everyone." The fear in his eyes deepened, but he was trapped. There was no way out. Rebecca had the power now, and he knew it. The school board was soon forced to issue an apology to Victoria. Charles Weber, no longer hiding behind his carefully constructed persona, was arrested. Charges of fraud, identity theft, and extortion were leveled against him, and his empire crumbled. Rebecca and her mother, after years of struggling, could finally rebuild. They moved into a small apartment, a modest place, but it was theirs. They hung curtains in the windows, a symbol of the new life they were starting. As Rebecca looked at her mother, she felt the weight of the years lift. "We did it," Mom, Rebecca whispered, her voice full of awe. Victoria smiled, tears slipping down her cheek. "We survived, baby girl. We survived."